I'm a single mother. I'm 43 years old now. I am a fashion designer running a company with a partner of mine that I undertook a couple years ago. So I live a fairly busy and fairly stressful and demanding life. So I suffered with anxiety and panic disorder for over 20 years. I recall having my first full-blown panic attack that put me in the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was certain I was going crazy or having a heart attack. And since that moment and that experience, every time I would have one again, they were always just as scary. And I would say before I started speaking with Kale, like I said, it had been 20 years. So it had kind of gone up and down throughout those 20 years. But I was having panic attacks regularly. And for me, regularly was several times a week. I would be driving in the car with my children to the grocery store, almost hyperventilating. And this is only a mile away from my house. Getting through the grocery store with them, I would be hunched over the cart like this, holding on, bare knuckling, trying to keep them near me, trying to look at the list, feeling like the grocery store was spinning around me. I was getting dizzy. I could hardly it was so painful and so difficult to get through. And I have to stop, try to breathe, yell at my children to stay close. It was awful, absolutely awful. Just bare knuckling it through. And somehow, some way, we'd get to the checkout stand where it almost became a full meltdown for me, where it was like, this was the slowest process in the world. And all I was doing was standing still with my kids. And there were times where I just wanted to drop all the groceries and just run out of the store with them, and, just walking across the parking lot with them, holding one hand really close, keeping the other one in the cart, and like, it was just so overwhelming. And, get back into the car just for a second, I might be able to breathe, even though I'm back in the car, which causes me even more anxiety. And so it was just like, there was no escape for me. And the only place I would sometimes find escape from my anxiety would be late at night when I could open up a bottle of wine. And that's where I would find relief for 2 hours, 3 hours if I wanted to drag it out. And that's drinking at least a bottle of wine, sometimes a bottle and a half, at the worst 2, just to get myself to feel no anxiety and to be able to finally fall asleep. Because if I didn't do that, I would lay in bed all night, with this horrible feeling of anxiety running through my body. And it felt like I had been plugged into an electrical outlet. Whenever I'd kind of start to fall asleep, like this electricity would run through me. And the only way I could not feel those sensations and get some sleep would be to drink excessively. And of course, that would impact my next day even more so. And I would wake up, feeling, even more anxiety. And I knew I was in this horrible, vicious cycle with the anxiety and the drinking. And when I became a single mother and now I'm alone with my children, there were a whole host of new things to be worried about. Being able to protect them at night by myself, being able to provide for them, and being alone with them started to give me panic attacks because I was afraid that I would pass out, that I would need to feed them something or entertain them or talk to them and, just do any basic thing for them, and that I was going to pass out through it. And I recall having to call my ex, their father, whom I didn't really want to call, but it was the only person I could call to come and relieve me on certain occasions because I couldn't get through the afternoon or the next 5 minutes alone with them because I was so overwhelmed by my panic. Other areas I would have panic attacks would be at work during meetings, or at work being interviewed or talking to a coworker. Maybe I did come off as being okay on the outside, but through every single interaction with another adult in a meeting, or even when I started dating, I was constantly in a state of trying to get out of that, whatever I could do. I remember the first time I went on my first date. And I drank a lot to get through it, and it didn't help. And all I could think of was, how do I get out of this? I was having a panic attack, and I just wanted to get to the bathroom. And I was like thinking, oh, I'm going to look like a crazy person going to the bathroom 5 times during this date. But that's where I was. I was always in a state of escaping every interaction that I was in. I self-medicated with alcohol for as long as I can remember. At least 10 years, I was using alcohol as a way to rest my mind at night. And if I wasn't drinking at night, I would probably be up most of the evening with just thoughts running through my head of, oh, I'm never going to sleep tonight. I've got a big day tomorrow. It's going to make my anxiety worse, or just any general fear about being alone in the house with my girls if somebody were to break in. There were just constant, thoughts and fears and an uncomfortable feeling, and also physical sensations at night. I would lay in bed and electricity and this dark energy would feel like it was running through my body, and I might start falling asleep, and then all of a sudden this rush of energy would come and it would wake me up. And I would get that hypnagogic jerk, is what they call it, on a regular basis. And the only way I could get through it was through drinking a substantial amount of wine. And that would be a bottle of wine, sometimes at a minimum, to get me to just get through that. And of course, when you drink that much, your anxiety the next day is much worse. So I was caught in this horrible cycle of, having to drink to sleep, but that also caused me the anxiety the next day. So I felt completely trapped. Like there was no way for me to get rest and sleep, and to be anxiety free ever. I was almost constantly in a state of anxiety at night or during the daytime. And maybe for 1 or 2 hours at night, when I was appropriately intoxicated, under my opinion, was I anxiety free for a little while. But obviously that was not sustainable. One of my biggest triggers was driving. I could get around my neighborhood a few miles here and there. It was never comfortable. It was always difficult. I always felt dizzy. I always felt like I was going to pass out. I bare knuckled it always to get to the grocery store or to Target or to the park. I would only drive on good days when I felt really good. I hadn't had too much to drink that night before. Those were rare occasions, and those were the only times that I could venture out for a little bit. Anywhere further, I would have to get a lift, or take a train, or have somebody drive me there. And getting on the freeway was absolutely nowhere in my deck of cards. It was not even something I would entertain. I had not driven on the freeway for over 7 years, maybe 10 years. I honestly don't even remember. The idea of even getting on the on-ramp brought me great anxiety. Before I started talking to Kale, I actually downloaded the Dare book. And after I had read it twice, I dared myself to go on the freeway. And I made it through one intersection. And I had a full-blown panic attack. I got off and I said, I'm never going to do that again. There was no benefit to it. I'll just take the long route from here on out. And I felt I felt so powerless, not being able to drive on the freeway, because everybody else was doing it. And it was going to be something that I knew was going to hold me back from many experiences, and especially my children from many experiences. I've read many books on anxiety. I've listened to many podcasts. I did medication. I altered my diet in different ways, cutting out sugar, caffeine, added a lot of different supplements, a lot of homeopathic supplements, none of which I would say are necessarily bad. And I also tried acupuncture. And that worked for the first 2 weeks, it felt like. And then the novelty of it wore off, and it had no effect anymore for me. So it definitely felt like I had tried everything, and I felt pretty helpless and stuck. Like this was just going to be my lot in life unless I wanted to be medicated all of the time, which I was not willing to do anymore. When I was getting the panic attacks alone with my children, I wasn't able to really do fun stuff with them. Staying home gave me anxiety. Going out with them gave me anxiety. And I was in a bad cycle. And I realized, with becoming a single mother recently and starting this new company, like this was not sustainable, or this anxiety was going to kill me in some way. And I was never going to be able to show up for my children or my company if I were to not be able to find some way to get help. And I was online, just late night, like always, on Facebook. And I joined this group, an anxiety group. And there was a post periodically by a guy named Kale Cap. I would just start listening to his videos. And I found very quickly that what he was saying and the method he was talking about resonated with me, and his character and personality resonated with me. And I knew that the idea of having a therapist was something I should be doing. And I had tried regular therapy before. I didn't have a whole lot of time to do that right now as far as, meeting with a therapist. And so I was a bit resistant to doing that, but also in this place where it's like, I have no choice. I can't afford not to do something right now. And Kale reached out to me in a random message, and I decided to have a phone call with him. There was nothing to lose. Of course, the first thing I said is, what are your rates and what's this going to take, being very pragmatic about it all. And, Kale just said, let's just talk and let's just see what's going on with you. And that's really where it all began, was with a 1-hour phone conversation where everything he talked about and everything I'd known about him at that time just felt right. And I don't know how else to explain that, but it just felt like this was going to change everything for me. Working with Kale, I can get through any work meeting, even dates, without any anxiety or panic, when I normally would have been in the state of a panic attack pretty much 90% of a meeting or a first date or something like that, or a social interaction. I have no panic attacks around my children ever. I'm able to go to the grocery store. In fact, I went to the grocery store or a Target recently, and I realized I wasn't rushing to get out of there like I normally would be. I actually started shopping around, which is something I rarely did. I would normally just get in, beeline through all the things I had to do. And I would even cut out some things that were not necessary at the last minute and just try to get through the checkout as quickly as possible. The checkout stand was normally a place where I would be sweating. I would be looking for some distraction, anything to just make the whole checkout process go by faster. And I can now say that I don't really recall the last time I went through a checkout stand where it was that bad anymore. In fact, I don't really think about it or remember what it's like, which is wonderful to not remember what that's like. I recently, this was a really big thing for me, I recently started driving on the freeway, and I never thought I would ever drive on the freeway again. And when I did, for the first time a couple weeks ago, I cried because I couldn't believe it. It had been over 7 years that I'd done that. And that was my biggest goal, was to be able to get on the freeway. And I cried, and I cried so much I couldn't even see the road anymore, but I didn't really care. But I did it. And to be honest, the freeway still causes me some anxiety. But I just went on it yesterday. I went to a friend's party, and I came back, and it was over 15 miles on, Los Angeles freeways, which are totally nuts. And it wasn't fun. I didn't, I can't say I was not even thinking about it because I just started going on that, but I did do it. And so that was great. And it's amazing that I can do that, because now I know that I can take my girls on all of the journeys that I had hoped to. Sorry. Just in, just in daily life, I feel mostly calm, I certainly have, feelings of impatience and depression and a little bit of, worried, but it feels normal now. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't come with a heart palpitation and the feeling like I'm going to pass out or that I'm going crazy anymore. It feels like, normal worry, normal depression, a little bit of anxiety, but it's not overwhelming, and it's not preventing me from engaging with people. In fact, when I started as a single mom, I was starting to date, I couldn't even go on a date at all without being in a full-blown panic attack the entire time. I'd suck down 4 shots of tequila beforehand just to get through or something like that. And now, I'm able to, be with somebody and be very comfortable and breathe very confidently and not even, the panic doesn't even really come up for me. And I'm able to sleep at night. This is a huge one. I will never say that I don't drink at all anymore, because I still do. But it's so different than what it used to be. It was a crutch to get me to sleep. And now it's something that I enjoy doing. And, but I never take it to this place where I am, drowning myself in booze to fall asleep. And I actually am falling asleep relatively easily. In fact, I often will be doing the meditation exercises at night that Kale has given me, and I don't even get through them. I'm just, before I know it, I'm knocked out, you know, and I'm sleeping. And maybe sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night for a little bit. But I'm able to just kind of do the breathing exercise and the thought exercise. And before I know it, I am back to sleep. And if I have some anxiety, it's not from the place of the panic attack and the palpitations or the crazy energy running through my body. It's more just something on my mind I'm thinking about. Like it actually, I could feel like a normal person having normal person worries, as opposed to somebody who is just like, you know, on the brink of losing their mind. In my work, because it's so important for me to be a present leader right now at my job, I've felt a big impact in that I can engage in conversation with my coworkers, and I can be present with them without going through the entire interaction wondering when it's going to end. Before I had done this work, I would be in any conversation with anybody. You know, I could be at a factory floor, I could be with an intern asking me a question, or I could be with, you know, a peer, and I would constantly be thinking, I'm going to have a panic attack. You know, I wish they would just hurry up, and so and I would be finding a way to get out of it, use the bathroom, say I have to go to my car, you know, cut any meeting short I possibly could. I was always, throughout the entire experience, trying to find an excuse to get it to end. And I don't do that anymore. I'm able to go through 2-hour meetings, you know, engage, you know, as much as one can be, you know, through a 2-hour meeting, but I'm there. I'm not in the back of my mind just trying to find a way out of every experience anymore, which was just a way of life for me before. A value on something like this, it's difficult to do. I've always been in a space where, even though I was, would say I'm middle class, you know, income, I never put my mental health above a lot of the physical objects that I had. You know, I have a nice home, I have a nice television, I have an iPhone, I have nice clothes. It was always easy for me to maybe spend $200 at Sephora on cosmetics I don't really need, but to spend $200 in one meeting with a therapist, I would automatically say, oh, my insurance doesn't cover that and I can't afford it. And at some point I realized how ridiculous my thinking was, because all the things I was spending money on, phones, cars, furniture, going out, drinking, for example, like, no, I've spent thousands of dollars on going out to dinners and drinkings every year. And that I always justified those experiences were worth it. But somebody would come to me and say, oh, hey, here's, you know, this anxiety coach program. I would automatically say, no, I can't afford that. And my insurance isn't going to cover it. And that's ridiculous. And it's like, what was I thinking? I couldn't afford not to do that, because the only thing in my life that was the most horrible thing was my anxiety. You know, everything else was actually okay. And I wasn't able to experience and enjoy going out to dinner anyways, or, you know, all the nice things that I had, because I was always in a state of fear and anxiety. And I was like, this is the most important thing to me, you know, and you have to get to that point where you realize that all of life would be more amazing. All your objects would be more enjoyable. All the people you're going out to dinner with, or to Disneyland, or wherever you're spending money to go with them, all of that would be something that would be so much more amazing if you could be present and not experiencing a panic attack through half of the experience to where you wanted to get out of it. And that's what I realized. And I was like, okay, I have to do this now. I can't afford not to do this. So for me, it was a complete no-brainer that I had to give, you know, my last savings if I had to, you know, to be able to do that. And now looking back at it, I realize I'm going to be so much more, you know, wealthy, not just financially, which I actually think I will, because I'm so much better at my job, but just in my heart and in my life's experiences from making that decision. I didn't know Kale 2 years ago when my separation with my ex happened, and everything for me really spiraled out of control, and I was in a state of panic all the time. Had I known Kale at the time, I feel confident that I wouldn't have weathered so many sleepless nights and so many days ridden with panic attacks alone with my children. Unfortunately, I didn't know kale at the time. But had I, that last 2 years probably would have been a little bit more, a lot more manageable for me. And at this point, I can just be grateful that I'm now on a totally different course. But if you're in a position where, you're kind of falling, you're spiraling down, maybe you're not sure if you've quite gotten to your rock bottom, I just feel like, there's just nothing to lose. I believe it was literally almost 8 weeks and I was on the freeway, and it was 5, maybe 4 weeks, the panic attacks were gone. 5 or 6 weeks, just not having really that much anxiety or insomnia at all. And now now it's so rare for me to even have those experiences. I can be in my worst trigger moments, like, on the freeway, having kind of a bad day, and I'll feel it, but it doesn't manifest itself like in a full-blown panic attack, like it easily would have before. The biggest lesson I learned is that a lot of my panic and anxiety was not as biological as I thought it was. And I'm not saying that it isn't. And I do totally think that there are underlying genetic predispositions for certain people, and that there are deficiencies that you could have. But I was so vested in this was something I needed to cure through medicine or changing my diet or adding supplements. Because I had so many physical symptoms. My anxiety was mostly physical symptoms: the palpitations, the shortness of breath, the dizziness, I'm going to pass out. Because it was so physical, I was so convinced it was it was so biological, and that I was only going to be cured by, a medical doctor or a naturopath or a chiropractor or an acupuncturist. I did not put much credit into therapy, and I tried some traditional therapies and they didn't have much of an effect. And so where I was wrong was that there was so much reprogramming of my biology and my brain that could happen, and that did happen through using Kale's techniques. And that is something I honestly didn't believe. I did not think that was what was going to make me better. And now I've realized that I have reprogrammed my brain to it doesn't really know how to have a panic attack like it used to. You physically really almost can't have a panic attack. Like, I've been in situations where I'm like, this is full-blown panic attack. I know it. And I do the breathing exercise, and it doesn't escalate to the full-blown panic attack. I remember not wanting to take my kids to daycare. Like, they're literally 3 minutes, a 3-minute drive. And I was like, I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm not going to get there. And I just got to get there and get out of there as quickly as possible. And now I don't even have that thought anymore. I don't even really think about anxiety and panic like I used to. I can drive to work. It's a 7 drive, and I listen to pleasant informational podcasts or music. And I don't even realize when I get to work that I drove there, when I used to spend the entire time holding on to the steering wheel going, oh no, here's that bridge. I hate this bridge so much. How am I going to get over this bridge without passing out? And I just those thoughts don't even enter my mind. I literally I daydream, or I think about what I'm going to do when I get to work, or a conversation I might have had with a friend. So it's just, my thoughts about anxiety are just that it doesn't consume me.